December 2025, Joint Base Lewis-McChord, Washington State. Dawn breaks over the Cascade Mountains. Inside a secure hangar, American soldiers are doing something nobody thought would happen this year. Loading live hypersonic missiles onto transporter erector launchers. 8 missiles, each one capable of striking targets 1,700 miles away in under 12 minutes. Each one traveling at speeds no current defense system can intercept. This is Dark Eagle, America's first operational hypersonic weapon, and after 3 years of failures, setbacks, and critics saying it would never work, it's finally here. The name tells you everything. Dark Eagle, chosen deliberately. Dark for the weapon's ability to strike from shadows, to disintegrate enemy capabilities before they know what hit them. Eagle for America's national symbol. Power, independence, strength. But also precision. Eagles are master hunters. They don't miss. And neither does this weapon. April 24, 2025, the Army made it official. Long-range hypersonic weapon gets its operational name. Dark Eagle. Patrick Mason, senior acquisition official, said something important that day. Hypersonic weapons will complicate adversaries' decision calculus, strengthening deterrence. Their speed, accuracy, and versatility are befitting its new popular name, Dark Eagle. Not just a missile, a message. To Beijing, to Moscow, to anyone who thought America was falling behind in the hypersonic race. The hunter has awakened. But to understand why this matters, why soldiers loading missiles in Washington State is such a big deal, you need to know the story. Because it's not pretty. It's not a story of flawless American engineering producing perfect weapons on schedule. It's better than that. It's a story about failure. About persistence, about refusing to quit when everyone said you should. That's the real American story, and Dark Eagle embodies it completely. Let's go back to October 2021, the first test. Army and Navy working together on what they call the Common Hypersonic Glide Body. Shared weapon. Army launches from trucks, Navy launches from ships. Makes sense. Reduces costs, speeds development. Or so the plan went. The test fails. Booster rocket carrying the glide body malfunctions. Vehicle never deploys. Defense officials call it a no test because the glide body had no chance to perform. Technical failure. Back to drawing board. Disappointing but not catastrophic. These things happen in weapons development. June 2022. Try again. This time, full missile test, all up round. Everything that makes Dark Eagle an actual weapon, booster, glide body, guidance, thermal protection, launch, and it fails. Completely. Missile doesn't perform anywhere near expectations. Multiple systems underperforming. Engineers poring over data, trying to figure out what went wrong. The problems are complex, not one thing. Multiple issues across multiple subsystems. This is bad. This is the kind of failure that gets programs cancelled. October 2022. Another test scheduled. But before launch, engineers find problems during pre-flight checks. Abort, better to cancel on the ground than fail in flight. But politically, this is terrible. 3 attempts. 3 failures, and the pressure is building. Because while America's struggling to get a prototype to work, adversaries are fielding operational systems. China's DF-17, operational since 2019. Medium-range ballistic missile with hypersonic glide vehicle. Already integrated into People's Liberation Army rocket force. Russia's Kinzhal, air-launched ballistic missile, used in combat in Ukraine. And America can't complete a test flight. The narrative is forming, United States falling behind, China and Russia leading hypersonic race, America's technological edge eroding. And it's hard to argue otherwise when every test fails or gets aborted. March 2023, try again, same result, pre-flight checks reveal issues. Abort. Program managers facing congressional hearings, explaining why billions of dollars haven't produced a working weapon. Media writing articles about American decline. Defense analysts questioning whether US can compete with China's pace of development. The pressure is crushing, not just on program officials, on everyone working on this. Engineers, technicians, contractors, hundreds of people who know this weapon is supposed to work, who designed systems that should perform, who keep hitting obstacles they can't seem to overcome. One engineer later said, "We felt like we were letting everyone down. Our families would ask how work was going. What could we say? Another failure? Another delay?" But we also knew the weapon was sound. The physics worked. The technology was there. We just had to find what was wrong and fix it. That's American exceptionalism. Not that we never fail, that we learn from failures, that we're transparent about problems instead of hiding them, that we analyze what went wrong and improve. Authoritarian systems punish failure. Engineers disappear from programs. Careers end. That creates incentive to hide problems, to report success, even when reality is messier. American approach is different. We admit failures publicly, embarrassing, difficult, but it leads to better outcomes. And slowly, painfully, the team was making progress. Breaking down every system into components, testing each piece individually, finding weak points, redesigning, materials scientists improving thermal protection, aerodynamics experts refining glide body shape, propulsion engineers tuning rocket motors, software developers rewriting flight algorithms, hundreds of improvements across dozens of subsystems. No single breakthrough, just relentless, methodical work. By late 2023, the team believed they were close. Issues that caused earlier failures had been identified and addressed. New tests scheduled, everyone holding breath. If this fails, program might get cancelled. Congress losing patience, critics getting louder, everything riding on whether the improvements worked. And then something changed. June 2024. Pacific Missile Range Facility, Kauai, Hawaii. Pre-dawn launch window, countdown proceeding, everyone watching telemetry. And this time, everything works. Missile launches cleanly, booster performs, glide body separates, flies the planned trajectory, hits the target. Success. First successful end-to-end test. Years of work validated. Relief washing over everyone involved. Not celebration yet. One success doesn't make an operational weapon. But it proves the concept works. Foundation is solid. December 2024, 6 months later, Cape Canaveral, Florida. Another test. Another success. All parameters nominal, target hit, 2 successful tests in a row. Pattern emerging. This isn't luck, this is a mature system performing as designed. Dark Eagle is ready, the hunter is proven. So what exactly is Dark Eagle? What makes it different from every other weapon the Army operates? Start with the basics. This is what's called a hypersonic boost glide vehicle, not a cruise missile, not a ballistic missile. Something different, combines elements of both but operates in ways neither can match. The weapon consists of 2 main components. First, a massive 2-stage solid-fuel rocket booster. This is pure power, accelerates the weapon to hypersonic speeds, above Mach 5, and carries it to high altitude. Above 100,000 feet, edge of space. Once there, the booster separates and falls away. Second component takes over, the common hypersonic glide body. This is where the magic happens. Unlike a ballistic missile that follows a high, predictable arc through space, the glide body stays in the atmosphere, generates lift, maneuvers. Traditional ballistic missiles are like throwing a rock. Trajectory is set at launch. You can calculate where it's going. Position defenses, attempt intercept. Hypersonic glide bodies don't work that way. They glide. They weave. They can change direction mid-flight, can adjust course to avoid threats, can approach targets from unexpected angles. And all of this happening at speeds exceeding Mach 5. That's over 3,800 miles per hour. At those speeds, air itself becomes plasma. The leading edges of the glide body experience temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough to melt steel, materials have to be exotic. Advanced ceramics, carbon composites, thermal protection systems that can handle sustained heating without degrading. The range is extraordinary, 1,725 miles officially. Some estimates suggest more. That means Dark Eagle launched from Washington State could hit targets in Alaska. Launched from Hawaii could reach deep into the Western Pacific. Launched from Allied territory like Japan or Guam could strike targets throughout China's interior. Command centers, radar installations, naval bases, airfields, missile sites, all vulnerable. all within minutes of destruction. And critically, all beyond the range of most Chinese defensive systems. China's built massive anti-access area denial capabilities specifically to keep American forces away. Thousands of anti-ship missiles, advanced air defenses, submarines, all designed to make it too dangerous for US to operate close to Chinese shores. Dark Eagle makes that strategy obsolete, because American weapons don't need to get close anymore. The system is organized into batteries, 4 transporter erector launchers. Each tail carries 2 missiles in sealed canisters, 8 weapons per battery. These aren't fixed installations, they're truck-mounted, mobile. You drive them to a position, set up, launch, pack up and move before enemy can target you. Survivability through mobility. That's the concept. And it's exactly what you need for contested environments where enemies are actively hunting your launchers. The first multi-domain task force at Joint Base Lewis-McChord got the first battery. These are soldiers specifically trained for operations across all domains: cyber, space, air, land, sea. Dark Eagle gives them strike capability that reaches across entire theaters, part of what Army calls multi-domain operations. Synchronized effects across all domains simultaneously. Dark Eagle isn't operating alone, it's part of integrated system. Space-based sensors tracking targets, cyber operations disrupting enemy communications, electronic warfare jamming defenses, Air Force providing targeting data, and then Dark Eagle delivering the kinetic punch. That integration is what makes this truly powerful. Not just the weapon, the entire kill chain working together. And here's where the story gets really interesting. July 2025, Exercise Talisman Sabre, Australia's Northern Territory. America just deployed Dark Eagle overseas for the first time, transported the system to Australia, set it up, demonstrated it to Allied forces, soldiers from the 3rd Multi-Domain Task Force, based in Hawaii, briefing Australian troops on capabilities. This wasn't just training. This was a message. Lieutenant General Joel Vowell, Deputy Commander U.S. Army Pacific, said it clearly. This system changes the game. We are looking at how we can deploy these together with Australia. Think about what that means strategically. Dark Eagle positioned in Australia puts Chinese military installations throughout the South China Sea within range. Every artificial island Beijing built, every radar site, every airfield, every naval base, all vulnerable to hypersonic strikes that arrive with minutes of warning. And there's nothing China can currently do to stop it. No defense system they operate can reliably intercept maneuvering hypersonic glide bodies. They know it. We know it. Everyone knows it. Carlisle Thayer, professor at Australian Defence Force Academy, explained the significance. Australia is prioritising long-range precision strike capability in response to China's military modernisation. Australia's acquisition of Dark Eagle would demonstrate willingness to lift defence spending. This isn't just about one weapon system, it's about alliance structure. America developing capabilities and sharing them with allies. Creating network of hypersonic strike assets across the Pacific. Japan interested, Australia interested. Coordinated deployment that makes Chinese defensive planning nearly impossible. Because you can't defend everywhere, and when hypersonic weapons can come from multiple countries, multiple directions, arriving within minutes, defensive systems get overwhelmed. Mick Ryan, former Australian Army General, now at Lowy Institute, called Dark Eagle a great capability given that it's ground-launched with pretty low signature. You can fire it and head back under cover. That's the operational concept. Shoot and scoot, launch and relocate. Don't stay in one place long enough for enemy to target you. Survivability through mobility and deception. And when your weapon can hit targets 1,700 miles away, you can position launchers in locations enemy doesn't expect, can strike from angles they're not defending, can hold at risk everything they value. The cost is significant. Congressional Budget Office estimated $106 million per missile. That's expensive. Army Chief of Staff General Randy George acknowledged it directly in June 2025 testimony. Said the service was preparing to test long-range missiles that are a tenth of the price. Army recognizes they need both. High-end capabilities like Dark Eagle for the most critical targets, and cheaper alternatives for everything else. Can't afford to use $106 million missiles on every target. Need cost-effective options too, but for the targets that really matter, for the command centers and radar sites and naval bases that enable Chinese military power, Dark Eagle is worth every dollar. And here's something important. These are conventional weapons, not nuclear. High explosive warheads. Precision guidance. Hit exactly what you aim at with devastating effect, but without nuclear escalation risk. This is actually stabilizing for strategic balance. Gives America options between doing nothing and using nuclear weapons. Middle ground where you can strike high-value targets decisively without crossing nuclear threshold. That's critical for deterrence. Beijing needs to know that if they invade Taiwan, America has ways to respond that don't require nuclear weapons but are still devastating. Dark Eagle provides that option. By December 2025, the first battery will be fully armed. 8 missiles, trained crews. Operational capability. That's the timeline we're looking at right now. And it's not just one battery. Second battery scheduled for fiscal year 2026. Third battery after that. Army building production capacity for 300 missiles total. This isn't a limited program. This is fleet-wide deployment over the next decade. Eventually, Dark Eagle will be positioned across the Pacific. In Japan, in Guam, in Australia, in Alaska. Creating overlapping coverage that puts Chinese military infrastructure at constant risk. That's deterrence through capability, through certainty that aggression will be met with overwhelming response. The Navy is fielding their version too. Conventional prompt strike. Same glide body, different booster optimized for ship launch. USS Zumwalt getting it first. Then Virginia-class submarines. By late 2020s, America will have hypersonic strike capability from land, sea, and eventually air. Air Force developing hypersonic attack cruise missile for bomber launch. Complete hypersonic triad. That's full-spectrum dominance, every domain, every platform, coordinated capability that adversaries can't match. China is watching all of this very carefully. They've spent 20 years building military designed around keeping America away. Their entire strategy based on assumption that US forces have to get close to be effective. They built thousands of anti-ship missiles specifically to threaten carriers. Built air defenses to deny American aircraft access. Built submarines to hunt American ships. Massive investment. Decades of planning. And Dark Eagle just invalidated most of it. Because if American weapons can strike from 1,100 miles away, Chinese defensive systems positioned to defend against threats within 500 miles are irrelevant. Can't hit what you can't reach. Russia is watching too. They fielded hypersonics first. Avangard, Kinzhal, Zircon used them as tools for strategic messaging. Look what we have that you don't. Look how advanced we are. And for a while that messaging worked. But now America has operational hypersonic weapons too. And American versions have advantages Russian systems don't. Dark Eagle is ground mobile, survivable, can operate from Allied territory. Russian hypersonics are mostly launched from fixed positions or from aircraft that have to penetrate defenses. Easier to target, easier to counter. American approach is more flexible, more survivable, better for deterrence. The engineer who said they felt like they were letting everyone down during the failures, they're not feeling that way anymore. Dark Eagle worked, multiple successful tests, operational deployment, soldiers training with actual weapons, everything they designed, everything they built, everything they refused to give up on. It all came together. That's the American story. We stumble, we fail publicly, critics say we can't compete, and then we deliver systems that work better than anything adversaries have. That's happened over and over throughout American history, and it's happening again with hypersonics. December 2025, soldiers at Joint Base Lewis-McChord loading the 8th and final missile into the battery. Training complete, systems operational, Dark Eagle ready for whatever comes next. And what comes next is deterrence. Because now China has to consider something they didn't before. If they move against Taiwan, American hypersonic weapons can destroy their command centers before the invasion even begins. Can take out radar sites coordinating the assault. Can strike airfields supporting it. Can hit naval bases launching ships, all within minutes, all from positions China can't target. That changes the calculus, makes invasion riskier, makes success less likely, and that might be enough to prevent war. Because the best war is the one that never happens. The one prevented through strength so overwhelming that adversaries choose cooperation over conflict. Dark Eagle isn't just a weapon, it's a statement. America is back in the hypersonic race, not just participating, leading, building systems that work, deploying them operationally, sharing them with allies, creating capabilities that adversaries can't match. After 3 years of failures, after critics said it couldn't be done, American engineers proved them wrong. The hunter has awakened, and the world is taking notice.